for joining. I know how close we are to lunch today, so I very much appreciate your time. Myself and the team are very excited to take you through a few exciting things today around cloud and HoloLenses and digitization. My name is Barry Ramirez, and I'm the General Manager for Service Creation and Design in Telstra, in Cloud Engineering, in Telstra IT. Bit of a long title. But we're here today to talk a little bit about, again, some tech, some design, and some business concepts, and also go through a little bit of a HoloLens demonstration that the team have prepared to sort of exemplify what it's like to bring together those three aspects that IT as a whole is coming together on. So what we want to start off with is really an insight into where the industry is today, right? Because I've been on deck for about a day and a half, and I've been spending some time in the exhibitors hall trying to get a feel for what's happening, in all the different providers and different partners that we have in the ecosystem. And it's very, very obvious that there's quite a lot of movement and traction that's happening in the industry at the moment. It feels like the pace of change is always accelerating. I know that's probably a cliche by now, but it really does feel like that, right? Every year we come back and we see new things that have been built, new things that have been created that we were talking about not even 6 months, not even 12 months ago. I also managed to meet up with the Telstra team, who have an awesome stand this year. Sorry, 4 points for the cheesy promotion. But as I was walking through the hall and actually going through and trying to connect with all the different providers and different technologies that we've actually created, I was trying to get not visibly excited by the amount of innovation that was happening in the hall, right? Because if you think about it, it's almost one of those wow moments that actually take us back to, we've come such a long way. How did we get here? How does IT keep getting better and better every year? I mean, we seem to be creating unimaginable solutions each year that help solve real-world problems. But perhaps you're thinking, we're IT. Of course we're going to be pushing the boundaries. Of course we're going to be, defining innovation. And in actual fact, that's not always the case. We've seen many examples of other industries that, haven't evolved or haven't kept pace with customers and with the market. And we've also seen examples of businesses that haven't moved with the times and so on. So I don't think progress is always a given. Because in 20 years, we've come a very long way. I mean, we started with mainframes. Sorry, I thought it was going to be cheering, so But we went from mainframes to client server, to x86, to virtualization and containers and hosting. Then we went on to web and app and mobile devices, into IoT and wearables and APIs and machine learning and AI and microservices, AR, VR. That's a pretty long list for 20 years alone. And I haven't even mentioned things like crowdsourcing, social media, peer-to-peer economies, and bots and drones. So again, how is it that every year IT seems to get better and better?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you said.
Does Siri want to do the thing? So it actually dawned on me as I was going through the halls and really talking to people that the way that we seem to continually push the boundaries is that we've nailed the ability to continually redefine our unfair advantage, to continually adapt and help our organizations compete in the marketplace based on the tool sets, the people, and the processes that we have to offer them in the business. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the term unfair advantage, it's really a unique benefit that you and your teams can provide to your businesses, whether they be internal stakeholders and internal customers, all the way through to the end customer as well. And it makes your organizations and your people more competitive, more relevant, and more successful in market and with all of your stakeholders and communities. And it's something that can't be easily replicated or bought or copied by anyone. And with that, we actually have to look through our people and our processing and technologies and understand how we apply that unfair advantage to get to that holy grail of 10x, right? 10x better, 10x faster, 10x cheaper. So through that, we actually have to look across how we provide those services. And how we provide those services are through, again, the people, the process, and the technology. And we're going to cover those three aspects today around how we can get started with innovating across those domains. So one of the things that we've leveraged to great effect over the last 20 years are the useful tools for service management, service delivery, and, if you like, service ongoing design and practice. They're tools that have helped us mature to where we got to today, right? There are things like roadmaps, standards, architectural principles, ITIL, service management delivery. Now, these things are actually very, very good for the business because they give the business a consistent and standardized way of knowing what we offer, how we offer it, and what benefit it is to them. But when you look at how that applies to the broader context terms of product development, community building, and so on, we found that those aren't the only tools that you can use when considering how IT can provide value to the business. We've actually looked across the different industries, and particularly into the product development and startup toolkits that actually have that focus toward things like transformative change, not just evolutionary change. And these things work well, the product development, startup tools, because of the fact that they focus on things like the customer, the supply chain, and of course the benefit and value proposition specifically. They help us build a credibility and actually build out our focus on the external customers and how that change with our portfolios will affect those external customers, right? And in contrast to the internal tools, which focus more on optimization and run, those are tools that we actually need to keep going with. We're not saying we should stop using them, because they're the ones that are responsible for the credibility and confidence that we have today with our businesses. But actually what we need to do is complement them with these new startup and lean tools to help us get an edge that helps the business grow. So rather than just run the business, we are creating new business. And that's kind of the way that we think differently about how our teams and services and capability will apply to both paradigms, right? To run the business and grow the business. Because if you can provide part of like the winning edge to help the business attack areas where it wants to go, I think that's part of driving out that unique advantage, unfair advantage, and winning edge that we are all trying to help our organizations with. It is that run versus grow, and it is the difference between IT as a service delivery organization, an order taker, fulfillment, etc., versus a business partner, one that can advise the business on all the opportunities that they could capture if they understood some of the concepts like digitization, like machine learning, like intelligence, chatbots, cognitive analytics, and so on, right? That's really the conversation that we'd love to get to with all of our customers and our stakeholders. But what are some of these tools that I'm talking about? I'm sure that you've heard of them. If you're on Inc.com, Entrepreneur.com, all those, they love talking about these tools. But actually implementing them in organizations is sometimes a case of step first. You have to lean in and get going. So one of the tools that we're going to go through are the business model canvas. Just really quickly, how many of you have actually seen and used and implemented the business model canvas in your organizations? Just out of curiosity. Got a couple hands. I do this sample set in almost every presentation just to see how well the traction for these kind of concepts are actually moving in market. So we've had about 3 or 4 people put their hands up. I'll go through the business model canvas. We'll also go through the customer journey, which is a design thinking tool set that we use for customer engagement. And also the Blue Ocean strategy canvas. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But the Blue Ocean strategy canvas is something that helps us with differentiation as well. So let's start with the BMC, right? These are the 3 tool sets: the business model canvas, the customer journey, and the strategy canvas. So the business model canvas is effectively a business model on a page. Now, I know that in the terms of ITIL and IT services, etc., we commonly look at things like SLAs and service assurance, etc. But the business model allows us to take a different lens on the IT service that you're providing. It actually describes things in particular around who the customer is, which segment, what sort of characteristics does that customer exhibit. It also goes all the way back through the supply chain, and it looks at who provides those services to those customers. Do you use partners, or do you do it yourself? Do you actually have an organic capability to deliver that through your organization? You can actually identify perhaps some products and services that you can offer customers that you may already have in your organization today that you may not have identified. And the way that we do that is because the center is all about the value proposition, right? It's what we bring to our customers through the supply chain all the way through and engage them. We also talk about how our services engage our customers. How do your services get into the customer's hands? So for example, on a technology standard, and I'm sure that a lot of people here are familiar with SOEs and things like that, do we download them? Are they automatically deployed? There's a channel all the way through to how our services are consumed. And this business model on a page describes all of that, right? It's one way to converse with the business on what they get and how they get it. More particularly, it actually talks about the bottom line, the costs and the revenue. In the context of internal IT, sometimes it's just benefit because we don't always have that line of sight to revenue and income. But at least we can describe what the balance is between the cost of the service and actually the benefit that it provides. So what we did as a starting point about two years ago was to actually use the business model canvas to describe, if you like, some of our more popular services we chose things like database standards and PaaS standards, just as an example, because you can see there's quite a lot of diversity in the different database technologies, right? And what we found was we connected with these internal application teams to understand why they would use one technology versus another. And it's not just about, I'm using this technology because it depends, X depends on Y. That's not the only reason why a lot of these teams were using the technology. In many cases, some of them were using the technology because of the community in the organization that was going to help them build the solution that they wanted, or it was to do with the point of presence or the network of people that they could leverage to help them build it. So there were these kind of non-technical and not necessarily commercial reasons for them using the technology. And through this process, we were able to identify why they were using our technology. And with that, we actually helped, if you like, drill into what the demand would be for those technologies and actually crystallize what the X factor is and then build it into the product on the next release. So if you understood that we had lots of traction on one particular database platform because it had libraries, because it had automation, and because it was available in many places, and that whole flexibility was what they were looking for, we can then start to say, hey, is there a way for us to build a community around it? Is there a way for us to productize that whole intelligence gathering, design, and then production of the whole solution? So these are the kinds of trends that we capture as part of the process of going through the business model canvas. And it helps us build higher up in the value chain so people start to order the service, not the technology, right? And it also helps us align our investment portfolios as well. So it helps us describe why we would invest in automation when automation can be multi-platform, multi-environment, and so on. So later, we actually applied a lot of our design thinking to these processes, right? And something that we'll touch on a little bit later, which is our customer journey map. We looked at how technology products can actually be improved through design thinking. When you look at it, design thinking is really about the customer, right? It's about customer insights, customer engagement, and also the, let's say, emotional and empathetic, humanistic characters of the customer. So those aren't traditional words you use in a solution overview document or a high-level detailed design or anything like that. But they are important for when we build them. And that's where the customer journey maps and all the other kind of practices we have in the design space really help nail the connection and bond between the service we offer and the customer that actually consumes it. So lastly, we've got the Blue Ocean Canvas, the Blue Ocean Strategy Canvas. Just really quickly, this one's quite a newish sort of construct. Does anyone have coverage or at least have used the Blue Ocean Strategy Canvas before? No? Cool. We'll go through this one in a little bit more detail because it's actually very, very good at being able to drill down into areas of differentiation. So when you look at, for example, a particular scenario where you have different options or you're looking at two different products that have different characteristics, the Blue Ocean Strategy Canvas allows you to understand which characteristics actually apply to a particular scenario, which ones influence one option versus the other and how they are different. And what we're going to do is look at how the teams that we actually have and the services that we offer, how they actually drill into and offer unique differentiation when we look at the two options. So what we'll start off with is the canvas. So this is a very, very illustrative Blue Ocean Strategy Canvas. I'd love to say that there was a lot of math and science behind this picture alone and that we're using real machine learning to actually generate the graph, and Cortana will explain it to you, but we might need to do that next year rather than this year. But basically, the red line is representative of a service delivery, a traditional monolithic IT service delivery, right? We're going to compare the difference between a monolithic delivery and an iterative, nimble delivery. And as you can see, the line on the red is the monolithic delivery. Ooh, we're calling someone. It's never fun. Let's just all enjoy this. I haven't had one of those in ages. Could celebrate the dial-in. So the yellow line is the more iterative, nimble delivery, right? And just on the bottom, and I've got the custom laser pointer, the first three squares are some of the traditional key factors in delivery. Pretty simple: time, capability, and cost. Yes? So as you can see, in a monolithic delivery, time is quite high. It takes a long time to deliver. The capability is quite extensive. The integrations are rich. There's a lot of functions and features built into these monolithic releases. But it does cost us a little bit more money. Now, when we contrast that kind of delivery in terms of how it hits the key factors that we use to gauge success, and we look at whether or not monolithic delivery could be applied to other key factors, other key objectives that the business has. And these are just illustrative, but we'll go through a couple of examples. How well does that delivery model apply to some of the other more nimble-centric key factors? And just as an example, we went through process of, well, how do we get more adoption and engagement and customer feedback into our internal product development? So as we're developing SOEs, as we develop new standards or architecture patterns, how do we actually get the feedback from the teams that are going to use them and actually build that into the program? Now, with such a static, if you like, scope, a monolithic delivery isn't usually the best way to do that, right? You need a more nimble way of doing things. And that's where we sort of saw that there are initiatives that will use smaller, more nimble areas. Now, you need to mature in some ways your organization to be able to adopt this. Automation, microservices, APIs, and so on, containerization, CI/CD, all of those sort of technologies help you get to a more nimble, known state. But you need to build toward that, right? We actually had an example with one of our programs called Cloud Enablement, which is an internal program that we have where we are operationalizing public cloud. So anyone in the organization at Telstra would want to use a certified pattern and tenancy for public cloud. The program really needed to educate and help promote the use of public cloud in the right way and gather feedback on what the gaps were and bring that back into the program and all the rest. That's the kind of initiative that you would use to help get a lot of traction. You'd use a nimble engagement with small bursts to gather feedback and then build that into the program. So what if another key factor that was important was around, let's call it mobile device currency and software currency? It's always a fun one, right? Making sure that the software that you offer is of the most up-to-date or at least relevant standard. One of the things that we always find challenges with is that the time to develop the standard, the time to develop the software and release it always keeps us out of date. So one of the ways that we tried to approach that through a small, nimble approach was that we actually had what we call common components. That's the way we do standards now in cloud. What it is crowdsourcing for standards. So rather than have one group develop the standards, a group of technologists who continually do database and infrastructure and network and PaaS standards, why don't we set aside the requirements, the security controls, and the governance structure, the governance process, to manage so that anyone could submit a standard? Which meant that anyone in Telstra, if you wanted to use the latest technology, all you had to do was download the package, understand what it is that you needed to conform to, and build that technology standard to the spec that you wanted it. What that meant was we had a huge diversity in the amount of standards coverage that we had. And it's just an example of the fact that large engagements don't always equal what people are looking for, right? So based on these key factors, we look at, again, how does the people that we have and the process that we use and the technology that we offer combine into making a differentiation and an unfair advantage for our customers? And this sort of Blue Ocean strategy canvas really helps with that, right? Because we're really identifying with what the business is asking for versus how we would deliver that, and then mapping out the options. Hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into how to use that, and I'm happy to take questions on how we've used it and how we've rolled it out and our vision for how we're going to actually condense it into an enterprise sort of landscape after the session. So now I've talked to you about vision, I've talked to you about process, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about people, because people are what make magic happen, right? As technologists, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the IT groups in our organizations are really the ones that help connect the digital world with the real world, right? We have to explain to our non-technical counterparts and our business leaders and so on about how the outcomes that they're looking for are delivered by the buzzwords that they hear about in market and in the arenas that we all see. We have to explain how the real world problems are actually solved through a digital lens. The only thing is that there are more than one lens, right? All three personas are technologists. And as we've learned, that being able to have multiple different lenses is actually a good thing. So we've learned a lot from the 2 hackathons that we've run this year. There was, we've had Microsoft sponsor the first one, which is around health and well-being, which is fantastic. And we had around 17 teams come together to actually build out, conceive, and then showcase their solution in 2 days. And what that gave us was a lot of insight into how we can develop a new dynamic for creating services, whether they're internal or in market. They actually helped show us how the interactions would work, how to actually get teams together, and the types of conversations that we're having. And I strongly encourage anyone here to either participate in Hackathon or come and join us on our next one. So from a very quick brief on what each one is, obviously the hustlers are the ones that really connect with the customer, can help describe their needs, help validate whether the business model is sound, and so on, and really communicate to the other two personas. From the hipsters' perspective, they're the ones that make things look sexy and cool, match colors, use color wheels, and all the rest. And of course, we've got the hackers, who are traditionally our technologists. And of course, that sort of discipline is widely ranging, right? What we found is that this whole process is a good incubation model for enterprise as well as it is for startups and for hackers. So you don't have to just have a hackathon for the purposes of just dreaming big or even problem solving, etc. You actually have one to bring together the right people so they have conversations after the event. And that's really kind of what we've structured part of the team that we look after, service creation, what we've modeled our team on. Because we have designers, we have developers, and we also have the business engagement teams. And that's really helped us get a very clear understanding of where a lot of our partners and our business teams want to go and help them prototype and iterate through some of the methodologies that I've talked about and some of the ones that I am about to talk about. It's really about understanding the entire value chain from inception ideation all the way through to delivery and launch, right? So from there, let's step into a little bit of design thinking. It's definitely something that is gaining huge amounts of traction. I'm sure that many of you have already sort of started to see the seeds of that in your organization. But I think that what it really distills into is trying to understand how humanistic characteristics can be built into the solutions that we're offering. Because when we launch a new service or offer a new technology to our internal teams or our customers, there is definitely a humanistic characteristics. What are they feeling? What are they doing? Does it actually meet their expectations on experience? Because as early adopters of technology, especially if you've got new technology coming through the door, we often pay the price, but the benefit is that we can shape the product, right? So what we need to do is actually look for those characteristics, not just around technology, but also around experience, and actually build that into the minimum viable. So we're now building minimum viable services to the organization with experience at the core. Because I'm not sure if you are a lot like me when it comes to downloading apps. I usually download the app, and if I can't log in, or if I can't register, or if I can't navigate, it usually gets deleted within the first couple of seconds, right? We have to lower the barrier for adoption and actually simplify the experience. And in order to do that, we have to have that mindset from the get-go about how we actually want to shape our products. So how do we meet the new experience, this new bar for adoption in a traditional IT context? So design thinking practices really help with that, right? Imagine the new way that you may be able to develop a service or a product that you offer your internal teams, not just with BRDs, like the requirements documents, or just solution designs and all the other things, because they're absolutely essential and they're very important to the business. But imagine walking into a solution design session where they're talking about empathy maps and personas and customer journeys and things like that. That's going to be part of the conversation. And that's going to be paired with, well, that relates to the user stories and the use cases and the technical architecture and so on, right? You're going to connect that together. But also imagine that there's a 2-meter customer journey map that has discover, browse, buy, support, and advocate, and then things like what is the customer doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? What does the customer experience look like? And what are the opportunities for us to make this experience better? Is that going to be part of the new conversation that you're going to have in your teams? We think it should be. And that's because of the fact that all the consumers are humans, and there needs to be some level of connection from them to the technology. That helps the organic growth. It helps the advocacy of those platforms. So what we did was we actually used a lot of our service journey blueprints. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen a service journey blueprint, but it's basically that whole life cycle from browse, discover, browse, buy, support, and advocate. But it also delves into the touch points of what the customer is going to be interacting with at a system level, at a user interface level, and so on. And when you've got this big picture thinking, you can actually sometimes look across the whole experience and say, we've actually communicated with the customer via email quite a lot during that interaction. Is there a way for us to make it part of the user interface? Or is it a way for us to make it automated to be able to go through faster? And we we found that was actually reality, that we were able to reduce the amount of emails by 50% on some of our services because of the fact that we made it part of the user interface and experience rather than being part of a click and respond kind of approach. So how do you implement the design-led development, right? We use internally a format called Sprint Studio, and it's just based off a customer discovery framework. If you're familiar with the customer discovery, it's basically discover, validate, iterate. So in the four sections, I'll go through them. We really want to be able to establish a proof of value or a minimum viable product very, very early on. When we first start, because these initiatives really just take between 4 to 6 weeks to complete this whole process, and you can actually get to a minimum viable in the first 3 weeks. But when we actually start, we get together with a team of 6 to 8 people across skilled, multi-skilled rather than hyper-skilled. There are overlaps in their skill sets, so the vocabulary is the same, the bandwidth of communication is the same. And they get together and spend a day on idea, viability, and feasibility, which is really around things like business model canvas. Is the value proposition valid? Is there going to be a customer at the end of the day? Are they going to be happy with it? That's day 1. And we define a very high-level scope and touch points for the customer journey. Day 2, we start building. And this is kind of the great part, because as you start building, you start to flesh out the amount of investment you're going to need, the complexity in the organization, how is it that all this stuff is going to come together. And then from there, you're able to understand more what the next iteration is going to be like. So the next 10 days is really about building user stories, the high-level solution so that we can communicate what's going to happen. And at the end, we have a customer validation checkpoint to make sure that what was actually built meets the need, right? Now, if you're using this for just proof of value, you can stop there. You've got your MVP or proof of value that you can show back to your investment committee, to your customer, and say, hey, does this actually hit the mark, or am I way off? And they might say, hey, the technology sits really well, but that's not how we would consume it. We would rather consume it through an API, or we might consume it through a CLI, and so on. So from there, you can iterate, and you can run another pass over the high-level solution. But if it is viable, and if it is ready, and you want to scale the delivery of the solution, we now go into more of a sizing and priorities. This really gives us our release planning, our sizing and scope, more of the, if you like, detail around how all of the releases are going to work together. And that usually just takes a day. Because from there, we launch into the sprint preparation, which gives us that whole long launch plan that we want to get to, right? But we continually iterate and make sure that that launch plan aligns with what people are expecting. And we've actually used this format to great effect, because a lot of our fast-moving, emerging technology initiatives are based on this kind of methodology. One of the ones that we actually want to show you at the moment was using Sprint Studio. We used the first 2 stages to build out a demonstration with how we might be able to change the conversation from a property developer and a real estate lens, right? And this was meant to bring together a design, business, and technology lens, which is what the team are going to show you now. JT and Sammy are going to go through the session. I'll try not to get blinded by the light. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Barry. So, how many of you in the room have recently, gone through the process of buying a new home? Can I get a show of hands? Okay, so a few of you. So, out of the people with their hands up, how many of you looked at, the traffic and the time it took to get to and from work before you bought in that particular area? Okay, we've got one and a few. And how many of you looked at the schools in the area and the average grades in that area before you bought? Because I know I did. So, obviously, a lot of people do invest time to make sure that, their requirements are met before they make that big purchase. And if you think about, if you bought in a well-established area, this information will be readily available, to you, like demographics, crime rate, schools, public transport, hospitals, local amenities, as well as, the look and feel of the neighbourhood. But what would that experience look like if you bought in a new estate? This information wouldn't be available. And compound that with having to select the block of land and then the design of your home. But what if we told you that we could actually change that whole experience, make that experience less daunting, allow you to, go through that experience seamlessly, be able to select your block of land, select the design of your house, plot that on the land and actually see it see inside it, look at, your neighbour's house so you don't pick the same design, obviously, and also give you access to key information through data insights so you can make that decision. And so I'm going to hand you over to Sammy, who's going to take us through, that demo, and I'm going to be Steve, the home buyer, looking for a family home.
I'm going to do a wardrobe change. I think that the microphone,
Oops.
just so that I can hear you better.
Oh, cool.
This is what I'm getting feedback. Oops. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, guys. Go for it.
All right. Hey, Steve. I hear you
Hello,
want to buy a
Sammy.
house. All right.
Yes, I do.
So, have you used a HoloLens before?
No, I haven't.
All right. So before we start, I'll just go through a few gestures, and this is for everyone as well. All right. So when you are selecting, you need to put your hand straight out in front of you. So make a fist, and then to select, you need to put your index finger to the roof, and then a hard tap down onto your thumb, and that
Just
will
like
be
that?
yep, that will be your selector. So I'll get your stand here for me, and I'll just put this on. So have you used a HoloLens before?
No,
No.
but it is very comfy.
Yeah. Just make sure you
Yeah.
pull it and make sure it adjusts
Yeah.
correctly for you.
Okay.
All right. Now, what I'll get you to do is keep your head as still as possible. Apologies for people in the front row if this is a bit jumpy. Hopefully everyone's seen games and stuff before. All right. So, welcome to Sunshine Valley. So, as you can see here in front of you, we have a new estate, and I'll get you to stand this way for me.
Yep.
So, as mentioned, we are bringing together a new experience. So, we've got upcoming. We have partnered with a new emerging estate, and we are bringing together the augmented view, and so we can go through this and you can see what a house and land package would look like. So what I'll get you to do is, so in front of you, you should be able to see a couple of blocks, and these will be empty. So just have a gaze down and look, and when you see, so your gaze is actually a red circle. When you see this and you see a block of land change to a different colour or a lighter grey, this is the one you are on. So have a look down, see which one you like, and then again, using the tap gesture, put your hand out in front of you and select the one you want. All right, so we'll get you to accept that one too. This is just taking it off the market just while, we're having a look. You don't want someone to come and steal it from, obviously, underneath your feet. Okay, so now you should be able to have a look up and you'll see a few houses in front of you and be able to select from these.
Okay, so I'm looking for a 4-bedroom
Yep.
with at least 3 bathrooms.
All right, so here you've got a few options, and these are covered in, obviously, the house and land package. So, you've picked a lot of a certain size. So these are the houses that we can custom build for you to obviously go on this block of land. So, you mentioned you're bringing your family in, so there are options here with, you want 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Do you want a carport? Do you want a living room? Do you want a study? Maybe change that into a gaming room, I don't know. So just have a look at those and just select the one you want.
Just give me a second. We're just having some of the resolution challenges. I love live demos. They're really good, aren't they?
I promise this worked yesterday.
That's better.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's better.
So this is what it actually
That's
looks
actually
like.
what it
Okay.
looks like.
All right. So now you can see that you've selected your house, and here it is on your block of land. So I'll get you to, again, just be careful of your head movements, but go have a wander through the neighbourhood, bend down, have a look at the house. You can actually stick your head down into the house and see the floor plan. So,
So I'm not looking at anybody in the Wow, it's very detailed.
Yeah. So there is also a primary school that's been built. We've got a kids' playground. There's great family areas to date. In a little while, we'll take you through, what's the facilities and what is going to be built and, forecast within the suburb. So that, it's just your primary school.
See the playground as well.
Yeah.
Great for kids. Okay.
All right, so you're happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so what I'll get you to say now is start suburb simulation.
Start suburb simulation.
Now what you should be able to see from here, we'll just wait for the screen to change as well, is a 2D map of your suburb.
Start suburb simulation. There we go, yeah.
Yep. All this here is a 2D view of your suburb. So you can see where you are in relation to this, as well as, what amenities are in the area. So this is all forecast to be built within the area. And probably should have mentioned that this is actually modelled off a real suburb northwest of Melbourne, about half an hour's drive. So we'll obviously change the names for demo purposes. But you can see, like, within a year, these amenities will be built. But have a look at the map, check out where you are. I think if you look that general direction, you'll be able to see it a bit better. And then we've also been doing some traffic analysis. So we've spent a short time monitoring the traffic around the area just so we can get an idea of traffic patterns, who's coming in and out of it, do we need to plan the estate better, whatnot. So to give you an idea of that as well, I'll get you to say start traffic simulation.
Start traffic simulation.
Just wait for it.
Well, okay. Here we go.
All right, so this gives you an idea of, what's happening in the area. So this is based off our analysis weekdays at 9 a.m. So having a look at those and, seeing what's around the area, would you be comfortable? You're happy to settle? You want to buy?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my house looks a lot better than the neighbours, so yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
You're trusted with a decision?
Yep.
Your wife will be okay? Yeah. All right, so what I'll get you to do, now that we've gone through that, I'll just take this off you.
Yep.
So obviously, that's all right. That goes through if you were to buy and you're obviously the one purchasing the land. So just to give you an idea of how this is also useful for, say, if you're the property developer, it's not just limited to the HoloLens demonstration. So it is a fully integrated app, so end-to-end solution spanning from device to cloud. So if you think of a web page when you've got your click monitoring and you can see where someone or what link someone has clicked, and you can be like, okay, great, this is what people are going for. You miss information about what they actually like and dislike, so you can only capture one part. If you think of that in terms of the HoloLens, you're going one step ahead and you can see where they're looking. Like you've got the whole 360 space, so you can see where their gaze is, you can see what they're interacting with, and like with the gestures and stuff. So as a property developer.
So now I'm Joe, the property developer, and I'm really keen on understanding, the data that we can gather from the HoloLens, because obviously, I've invested a lot of, money into this, and so Sammy's going to take us through, the data that's collected as I just went through that whole experience.
Yeah. So I guess, using those gestures and using more of the insights from the HoloLens, you can see, I guess, what objects people interacted with. Was there a certain house, people preferred over another? Were they more interested in looking at the schools? Were they more interested in the hospitals? Is it maybe the facilities? Like we can take that information and then, continue to build and see how this affects people, see who's coming into the community and, expand it for them, because ultimately that's what it's for the people. So. Now you've seen that, I will pass you back over to John. He's now John again, who will run you through a bit of the cloud.
So as you can see here, obviously, the Azure platform makes it extremely easy for organisations, like ours, to provision capabilities to support these prototypes that we've just shown you. And what you see here is, Azure's IoT Hub, together with Event Hub, to ingest the data, Stream Analytics to apply that, the analytics on top of the data that we've collected, and also Power BI that gives you that fancy dashboard. But you and I know that obviously, as you kind of provision or move workloads to cloud, they need to integrate back into your corporate network. They need access to on-prem services, and applications like your CRM, like your payment system, and like your billing apps. And in Telstra, we have a cloud-first strategy. And as part of that cloud-first strategy, we have a program of work which, Barry, kind of touched on, known as Cloud Enablement. And that program of work is operationalizing public cloud. And so I'm going to touch on some of the key areas which the program has been focusing on. The first one being, your end-to-end onboarding for cloud. And we've taken a different approach to the way we kind of, have looked at delivering that stream. And we've taken a more customer-led approach. So we've had customer workshops to kind of really identify the gaps, in our current processes, because we want to make sure that, we have a standardized way of consuming cloud. We've got a lot of people in the company that previously, did use their credit card. And so we want to have visibility of spend and of the data that's sitting in the cloud and who has access to it. The other piece is the workload placement matrix. And I know this is a Microsoft event, but within Telstra we have a multi-cloud strategy, as we know that one size doesn't fit all. And so it's very important to understand the capabilities and the risk profile of each cloud, and how your certain workloads within your organization, either it be new or the ones that you're moving, fit within those clouds. The other piece that obviously need to focus on as well is connectivity. Express route, and obviously being Telstra, we consume our cloud gateway product, to connect our on-premise services and users to the Azure platform. And at the same time, that then enables the on-prem services, like identity. Identity is an important piece. How do we solve identity as we move workloads in the cloud? Now, if you treat the cloud as an extension of your data center, you might be okay with integrating directly with your on-premise directory store. But then think about PaaS and SaaS. What kind of identity design pattern will you adopt? Is your security team comfortable with storing credentials in the cloud? And if they're not, then how do you accommodate that? The other major pieces is obviously DNS. How do you resolve resources sitting in the cloud, and how do resources in the cloud resolve the internal workloads? And then when you add PaaS, which is internet addressable, that obviously adds other challenges as well. Automation. Most organizations have solved the automation piece for provisioning, but when you move workloads to the cloud and you are exposing that to the internet, we need to act quick. And so we need to look at things like automated security response, and that's extremely important. I'm not going to touch on all these things, but licensing is another big one, and capacity management. And it's not your traditional capacity management of infrastructure. As you know now with cloud, that's kind of removed, and you don't need to worry about the compute, storage, and network. However, you still need to think about the soft and hard limits that are applied per subscription. And what's your process of monitoring that, and do you impose your company kind of limits as well before you need to switch over to another subscription. And so they're the kind of key areas that the program are focusing on. And obviously, another one is operations. How do you enable your operations team to support workloads as they move to cloud? Now that again, your storage, your compute, and your network's been looked after by the vendor, how do you structure, and what's the delineation between the different teams as they operate workloads in the cloud? So now I'm going to pass you back to Sammy, who's going to take you through some of the technology pieces that we've got on this slide as well for the HoloLens and the HoloLens data analytics.
Alrighty, thanks for that. Okay, so can I just get a quick show of hands? Who has actually used the HoloLens before? Oh, yay, okay. All right, so some of this might be repeat information for you guys, but I'll still just go through it anyways. And I guess this is just a bit of a talk, I guess. Our experience, so Vikram and I were the ones that developed this. We did develop it rapidly within a month. So we'll just go through, I'm just going to touch on issues we faced, or things to note, things that if you want to get started on this, where's best to start, and just a few features like that. So, getting started, Windows 10, you need Windows 10. You also need the HoloLens SDK, and we used Unity to develop this as well. One thing we found, we purchased an Xbox controller, probably a week in. This cut down our development time significantly, because say you've got features and you've got, 5 or 6 small changes you want to add in, it is better to use the Xbox controller through Unity so you can see these changes, and it functions the same as if you were looking through the HoloLens. So instead of your gaze being the selector, A is in the selector. So you can do this and you can test those small features, and when you've got a few, you can then push those through to the HoloLens rather than waiting, after each small one. I guess with pushing through to the HoloLens too, and maybe you guys already know this, but use a cable. It works a lot faster than pushing over Wi-Fi. If you are doing it through Wi-Fi, make sure you've obviously got the same IPs in the device on your, in your build settings while you compile before you push. The other thing is, HoloLenses aren't cheap, so if you don't have one, don't worry, you can develop without one. You can use a HoloLens simulator to start off with, and again, you can just use the Xbox controller through Unity and you can see these, and obviously you're not going to get the full experience, but once you get the HoloLens or, you save up for one, whatever it is, you can then push through after a while and you'll be able to see how it works. So yeah, again, as you know, like we did the MVP within a month, wasn't without trial and error. So one thing we found was there were certain features that, and depending on who you're developing for, depending on who your experience is. So with ours, with the real estate, you might give it to, for example, I don't know, my parents. Say my parents want to buy a house, they're looking to move. They're going to have no idea how to use a HoloLens. And so they're not going to think to look up or to use the space for a selector. So you also have to tie that into what you were building. So we noticed that, so with the house selector, and it was a bit glitchy just because of the demo, but it's just in front of you rather than spanning across your 360 view, just because it wasn't as intuitive to people to actually look around and use the space. So just things like that, and I guess, take into consideration who your audience is and like who is going to be using it, because if your experience goes for maybe half an hour, the HoloLens is 579 grams, which isn't a lot, but after half an hour it starts to get a bit heavy, and having it right in front of your eyes, you get a bit like, well, I know because I've had it been wearing it straight for weeks now. So I guess as well, like things we noticed with rendering, we kept pushing the boundaries and we kept trying to see, what is the capability of the HoloLens? How far can we kind of take it? So to give you an idea, we started off like super basic on our scene with the house selectors and like the scene. So I will just show you that quickly. Ta-da! So this is how we started. So as you can see, it's pretty basic. So this was us, jumping straight in there, seeing what we could build, see what was available in the asset store, to see, how do we put this experience together? Like, where do we even start? So we started with this, and then, a few days in, we had things starting to hook together. Like we could select the plots and, select a house, and they're obviously all monopoly houses. So we're like, okay, I feel like we need to get a little bit better at that. So we had a bit of a pause. We started to rethink and see, what could this actually look like? We need this to be a real experience, and we need to obviously sell it. This is, we want this to help people. So we went kind of back to the drawing board, and I spent a couple of days remodeling the scene, which is the one you would have seen in the demo. So I'll just go back to that. So that's this one here. It just gives you an idea of, different textures. We then played around with to see, how detailed could we get things. So this is the kind of detail we then got to. So we just kept pushing with the HoloLens, like what could it handle, We did have it a bit further than this, and we had to scale it back because we found, maybe it was starting to be a little bit glitchy or whatnot. I guess as well, we noticed that while we could have, a realistic looking scene, we did have to take shadows out because it wasn't great on the HoloLens. So again, just taking things like that into consideration. Actually, I will just go through quickly and just show you some of the code. And sorry, again, if you've been using this already. All right, so obviously we incorporated some speech commands into our demonstration.
This is okay.
Yeah, this is just a quick example of what it looks like. So, there is great documentation already on Unity and on HoloLens, just on their websites, obviously Microsoft website and whatnot. So this was just voice commands, what we could get it to do, and just another quick example. This one was, we've customized it a little bit, but there's no point reinventing the wheel for some things. So this is, how the HoloLens gaze stabilizer looks. So rather than being like super glitchy and like everywhere, this is what Microsoft have obviously come up with to help on that. So again, these are all, from my personal experience developing this. And again, just make sure you have, if you were to get started, Windows 10, Xbox controller really helps. The HoloLens simulator, And I guess that's pretty much it. So, I mean, we're always learning. If anyone's got any suggestions or anything like I could learn, please feel free to tell me afterwards. But yeah, for now, I'll hand you back over to Barry.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys. That was great. Well done. So thanks for attending the session today. I really hope that you guys got a lot out of this session, considering how much coverage we actually have during just 60 minutes. We've talked about design, we've talked about the business concepts, and we've talked about the development aspects. So if anyone wants to catch up with us after the session, please feel free to find us. We'll also be at the stand where all the amazing Telstra team are as well. 2 points. And yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out.